Are we recording? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it is time to start. Hi, everybody. This is CB2's July full board meeting. I'm Susan Kent, chair of the board. And even before attendance, we have the pleasure of Borough President Levine with us, and I would like to have him. I know he's very busy, so where did he go? It's right. Oh, I'm sorry. It's kind of the lights. Whenever you're ready, you're on. Exactly. Or you can use that microphone over there. Okay.
Okay. All right, I feel like I'm doing Broadway or stand up. Hello, Community Board 2. It is so great to see all of you in person. Applaud for that. And I know we have some of you online. It's great to see all of you too. I wanted to come by today to take advantage of this opportunity. Welcome again to the 5 new members on CB2. You guys are off to a great start. I hear you had like a little cocktail mixer last week. So invite me to the next one if I'm cool enough to get an invite. That would be a lot of fun. I want to acknowledge that here joining us is my wonderful Director of Community Affairs, Trisha Shimamura. None love. I just want to hit 2 policy issues for you, let you know what we're working on. Last week, we introduced a big package of legislation in the City Council. Our lead partner is Councilmember Keith Powers. We had co-sponsors from all the relevant committee chairs. The focus is indoor air quality. Now, it used to be in this city, we used to build buildings with windows that opened and lots of fresh air coming in and out. And then starting in, I don't know, the 60s, we began hermetically sealing off buildings. I'm not sure what they were thinking. It turns out that is really not good for our health. And that was true before the pandemic. It's a problem for all sorts of reasons, but we really paid a price. Really, it had deadly consequences during COVID. And we're taking a chance now when we're not in crisis to try and get this right. And really to lead the country on this. I've actually had a number of talks with people in the federal government, even the White House, who are anxious for New York City to lead to show that this is possible. We introduced 4 bills that would require the installation of indoor air quality monitors in all kinds of buildings. There's a bill related to public schools, a bill related to other buildings owned and operated by the city, another bill related to privately owned residential buildings, and finally one on private office buildings. And they all work differently. I probably won't get into a lot of the details. The idea is to collect quite a lot of information about things like CO2 content in the room, what they call air change, which is how many times an hour the air completely circulates in a room. This is really important. Also, solid matter particulates of the type that we were breathing during the horrible smoke from the Canadian fires and more. We know enough to know that we're not meeting good benchmarks on almost any of these measures in many spaces in New York. And so our legislation would require these monitors in all public schools, classrooms, hallways, and common spaces, would require them in other kinds of city-run public buildings. And then in the private side, it's a little more complicated. The bills require them when developers get city financing. It makes it optional for other buildings. And this is both on the residential and on the commercial side. But if we do this, and boy, are we getting great response from the city council and beyond, it's going to, for the first time in any major American city, give us information on the quality of the air we're breathing in rooms like this and elsewhere. And to help us then prepare for, God forbid, the next pandemic or resurgence of this one or other challenges that we know we face with indoor air. So I think I'm going to pause there, but I'll just say that I'd love to have CB2 dig into this if you have a chance. Look at the bills, think about how it affects the buildings in this board, think about what you want to know about the indoor air quality and how you want the city to deal with that. Does that sound good? Yes? Am I allowed to take a question now, or do you want us to wait? Go for it. No, go ahead. Yes, so our plan currently would have the Department of Health, city's Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, purchasing the monitors. Now, they're not expensive, but this is a real question to ask because Department of Health is struggling right now with pretty tight budget, like every other city agency. So this is a fair question, and we're working on getting an answer. I'm going to argue probably that this is so important that it justifies a real investment, but we're working on getting you an answer on that. Thank you. Yes. Thank you. Likewise. Great question. So for the residential side, this would not be required for privately owned buildings, except in the case of new construction where they're getting city subsidy. So for a building like yours or buildings like yours, this would be optional to opt in for a 5-year pilot. And I believe that if you were to opt in, the city would pay for the device. I'm going to confirm that with the team. Hence the question about what this costs the city. So you have to think about it, whether it would be helpful to you, helpful to your tenants. You might feel that you've got great air quality and you want to boast about it. We've actually heard that from some buildings, like perhaps a building like this, which appears to be more modern and feels like it has pretty good HVAC. There might be filtering. They might want to brag about it. I don't know. But at any rate, it will be up to your discretion. So I don't think there's any reason that a small property owner would have concerns. Sound good? All right, you're going to reserve judgment. Read the bill. Yes.
Yeah, is there any requirement for retrofitting existing office buildings, which are the ones that are always still offices?
At this stage of the legislation, no. I can't tell you how heavy of a lift all this is. And I think that the first stage is to get the data. I think the next stage is going to be to establish standards for new construction in the building code, and that the most difficult stage is retrofits. But I think this will help. I think this will create a new sort of expectation among the public. It'll help to really solidify our understanding on how bad the problem is. So I do think this is a big step forward. Okay, yes.
Can you use the microphone? People can't hear on.
Yes, it's Will Benish here. So I obviously there's a lot of complexity to science, but is there any sort of education component on sort of if it turns out there's a high level of pollution within a certain building, what you can do in the near term, i.e. buy a portable HEPA filter to plug into the bedroom or whatever that's going to clean that room? Like, I think that's sort of an important part of it is the education.
This is a really big piece because not only is the public, I think, not really aware of how many times an hour is the air supposed to exchange in a room? I mean, I'd never even contemplated that thought before COVID. And I think probably a lot of you might admit the same. And on all of these things, like there's not an exact established standard on the CO2 level. And so I think we have to do a lot of public education. You're talking about like remediation, but even before that, like what is the goal here? Now we took one little step forward in the last week or two. The CDC for the first time established a standard on air change, which they now say is 5 times an hour. So let me tell you, most rooms in New York City are not meeting that. I mean, really, I think a lot are in the 1 to 2 range. We're about to find that out. So, but we're going to have to educate people on what's acceptable and what to do about it.
Yeah, I think it'd be a great topic for our quality of life committee maybe at some point. So
All right.
throw that out there.
Excellent. Please.
Sorry, hi. I just want to applaud you on this initiative. I mean, Rome wasn't ventilated in a day, and neither will New York be. But I think we learned so much during COVID about this. And, you know, this obviously, your plans obviously contemplate the future and putting that knowledge into some sort of very practical terms and just raising consciousness on this issue in and of itself is enormous. So I just want to thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. Look, the cliche is you want to fix the roof when the sun is shining. And we're not in a crisis stage of COVID right now, thank goodness. And so this is the time to work on this, not when we're back in crisis, whenever that will be. So was there one more question? Okay, great.
This sounds good. I guess my first question is, who's gonna monitor? First, who's gonna pay for it? Probably we will as taxpayers. But who's gonna monitor it? And then how are people who are not living up to the standards going to be?
Yes, so for now, it'll be the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. The city's Department of Mental Health and Mental Hygiene will pay for it. And the goal is that the data will be publicly available so that you can go check a website to see whether the air quality in your kid's school, in their classroom, in the cafeteria, in the gym is up to standard. So that's a big deal. And it's why we need some public education so people don't like either freak out unnecessarily or misread the numbers. And the legislation does not currently have consequences built in because, as I said, we're just trying to figure out what is the quality of the air at this point. But the next logical step is to decide we got to have minimum standards and how we're going to achieve them. And so this is big. This is going to take a while, but now's the time to start. Okay, thank you. So oh, sure, in the back, can someone maybe pass the mic back?
Okay. Maybe the biggest problem in this city is to find money for low-income housing for poor people. My question is, how in God's name are you going to do both? I mean, just to get housing for poor people, number one priority, and now you're talking about something else completely, which is also important. How is this going to happen?
Okay, well, I don't think I'm going to go too deep into the work I'm doing on affordable housing, which is my number one priority. I refer you to the plan we put out in January called Housing Manhattanites, which goes in deep on where and how we want to build 73,000 units. So if you just search Google Mark Levine housing plan, it's the first thing that comes up. So hold that thought. I care a lot, but I want to move on to one more topic very briefly while I have you all, which is a call to action we put out on AI, artificial intelligence, and New York City. Not science fiction anymore. Not really even about the future anymore. It's here. We have to act yesterday. We identified half a dozen areas in which New York City government, and I would even argue community boards, have to start answering big questions and starting to make moves. We talked about the schools, where we've done almost nothing to adapt to the fact that every kid has access to an AI tool that can write an essay. In fact, the school's original response was just to block it. And we've done nothing to help empower teachers to use these tools. We've done nothing to advise students and teachers about the dangers, the threats of content that can spread bias and misinformation and worse. And I should say throughout this report, we sought to weigh the balance between the opportunities and the threats, and both are real. This could help cure disease and improve medical care and provide individualized tutoring for every child. It also could disrupt the job market. It could lead to the spread of bias and misinformation. It could ultimately even pose a safety threat. We looked at elections with real concern about the potential for widely available misinformation. These tools can create images and video and speech that can be indistinguishable from the real thing, that could contain fabricated content, which could defame an opponent in a local election. And we have no system to deal with that. We call for the Campaign Finance Board to establish a requirement that people identify all AI generated content as such. We looked at the impact on creative professionals, because this is a town with hundreds of thousands of people who are creating graphic designers and authors and videographers and photographers much of whose content was used to train these models without regard to copyright. And we believe in a different way of a different standard in which creatives have the ability to decide whether they want their material in the training runs for these tools, and if they so choose, to get compensated financially if they want them to be included. The city could set a standard by only purchasing and using the kinds of tools that adhere to that principle, and they are out there increasingly. We looked at workforce development, where I feel like we're training people for yesterday's jobs, that there's been very little effort to adjust the kind of jobs and the way we're training for jobs to account for what will be potentially a rapid shift in the economy. And lastly, on the safety front, you know, New York City, when it wants to, can be the center of world-changing research. We're about to launch a climate exchange on Governor's Island. Some of you might know about that. The city created a New York Genomics Center. Is that in CB2? I think it might be. It's produced major breakthroughs in genomic research. The city did that. We've got a pandemic response institute getting off the ground, but it's going to be great. We should have a center for AI safety, drawing on the fact that we have huge array of universities and by one estimate, 40,000 AI professionals. Let's make this the city in the world which focuses most on ethical and safe artificial intelligence. We can do that here. This is all on our plan. If you have a chance, check it out. It's not technical at all. It's not long. Would love your feedback, would love CB2's feedback. So I'm just going to close out by saying to new members of the board and veteran members who would like refreshers, we're leading trainings for all Manhattan board members, but focused on new members on a whole array of topics, from equal employment opportunity, conflict of interest rules, and I think a variety of others. So tune in. They're great. Trish and the team are doing a really good job. So I think I'm going to pause there. I've used up way too much time. And I'm just going to say thank you, CB2, for having me. I'll be back in person, on Zoom, and elsewhere. Enjoy the rest of your meeting, everybody. Thank you.
Assemblymember Glick is here. Well, this is great. It's good to see people outside of little boxes that and real life. So it's I'm happy to be here. Those are your glasses. If I take mine off and it's on a dark surface, it's a lot of slapping around. So it was a very busy session. I know that we've given you a report on what we've done in the course of the session. There are things that didn't get done. We're very hopeful. My top priority for next session, and we'll be working through the off session to build support, is for what is called the extended producer responsibility. This requires manufacturers, food producers, and the like to contribute into funds for recycling and reducing their use of packaging. It is a packaging reduction and a Plastic Reduction Act. The fee reduces as they reduce the weight of their packaging. It is with a little asterisk. We don't want to encourage the use of plastic, which is lighter. So the state cannot override, nor should we, food safety issues. So that is sort of a little bit of a shared responsibility, but we're very excited. Obviously, chemical industry is not happy and a whole host of manufacturers are not happy, but we think that that it's clear that our waste problem is enormous. This, we think, is the best way to deal with it, and that forever, manufacturers have pushed items out to the public, and we have been
we collectively, local governments, have been responsible for the solid waste disposal. And so that's why we see this as a shared responsibility. We are, there are also a wide range of other issues that come through the committee that might not be my bill, but for which I have a responsibility to see that that moves out of committee. And it's exciting. I mean, I loved higher education, but I'm glad to make this shift to the Environmental Conservation Committee. So bills like the prohibition on dumping radioactive waste in the Hudson from the decommissioning of Indian Point. That came through the committee. We had to do a little work with the sponsor to avoid federal preemption. We think we did that effectively. We had another bill that had to do with restoration or shoreline protection. We were in favor of not requiring, but giving a preference to DEC for permitting natural barriers and natural types of shoreline protection as opposed to hard structures, walls and the like. We've probably eliminated in the state 3/4 of our wetlands, and like Jamaica Bay was an enormous wetland and it slowly got shrunk. And that's why we have inboard flooding to a large extent, aside from climate change. So it's about restoring some of those natural features that protect the inboard without using hard structures that in and of themselves are problematic. So I'm excited about a wide range of things. I used to spend my days touring college campuses without having children. But now I'm on farm tours, solar and energy projects. We're working on a bill to require wind turbines to have one painted rotor to make them more visible. But there's an FAA issue. Currently, they require them to all be white. They are studying the issue, and we keep nudging them because we believe that this is a way to reduce interaction with birds. And we are in the Atlantic Flyway, so we really need to be moving that along as we are seeing more and more wind power, which is appropriate and positive. And I'm happy that as I was leaving the Committee on Higher Ed, we got a lot of resources into CUNY and SUNY for a range of programs for wind power support, whether it was the actual teaching for technicians or marine services, because these things are pretty far out in the water. And so you need to have boats that are pretty large. The SUNY Maritime has been working on large ships. We think they have to be on mid-sized barges in order to ferry parts out. And there is in Brooklyn waterfront, there is in fact a marine terminal specifically dedicated for wind power. And so we think there are all kinds of jobs in the future, but not all of them are, some of the technical skills are mechanical skills. And so we don't want to lose sight of that as part of the future. The green jobs include doing things that are not just programming something, but actually physically creating and repairing and installing equipment. So that's just a snapshot. We have a report, which I'm sure Roy has left, who's sitting in the back, and we're happy to have Roy in person. We have Roy in the office, and now Roy is in person with you all.
Thank you. I'm wondering, I know that the Environmental Bond Act passed referendum, and so I wonder if your committee will be involved at all with the disbursement of those funds and whether any of that will come to Hudson River Park and Manhattan for shoreline protection and so on.
We very much, there are two things that we don't have. The disbursement is an executive purview, but we do have oversight. And it's the Environmental Protection Fund, which is a lot of capital dollars. It's last year and this year was at $400 million. It had previously been at 320, so it's jumped up, and we want to keep it at that level, if not increase it. It is for open space acquisition and protection. It's for water quality issues. It's a wide range of areas, including things like stewardship for both the Adirondacks and the Catskills. The fires in Quebec burned more acres than the Adirondack and Catskill Park together. So one of the things that we are concerned about is protecting our forest land, because those are our watershed. And we have problems with invasive species. So back to the Bond Act, yes, it's $4.2 billion. Some of that money has gone out. There is a water quality program that's been $500 million a year. And that was augmented by some money out of the Bond Act. 200 million was added to that. And that gets dispersed throughout the state. There are a lot of smaller communities that don't have a Department of Environmental Protection like we do. So their expertise to be able to even write grants is limited. So some of the money goes into assisting, technical assistance to small communities so that they can up their water quality performance, the water treatment. PFAS, we're trying to, the forever chemicals is a serious problem. I have a bill to ban it in personal care products. Not a happy thought that there are personal care products that are out there that use PFAS in different ways for stabilizing the gel or the liquid. And, the thought that people are using that is pretty frightening. But there's opposition to banning it in personal care products. Who would think? Who would think? So we certainly, in the Environmental Protection Fund, have dollars allocated to the Hudson River Park. I know that we have ask for a $15 million allocation for the estuarium project. I can't tell you today where that is, but that is in, we're working on it. And we'll be doing hearings. I mean, that's the other thing you do in the off session. You come to community board meetings. You have meetings with individuals that are on a wide range of subjects, and you hold hearings. So we are in the process of making a list. We've had a lot of requests. We can't do them all, partly because the limitation of staff, the program and council staff and the Ways and Means staff are shared by everybody. And I share them with the Energy Committee and one other committee. So we get our oar in the water, so to speak, early and see how many hearings we can actually get approved for, because they apparently won't let us be hogs and use them all. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you all.
I know Councilmember Bottcher is with us, but first we're going to do attendance.
All right, Susanna Aaron. Natasha Avanesians,
Present.
Online.
online. Akila Aswi. Not here. William Banish,
这样不很清楚。
Keen Berger. Thank you. Carter Booth. Katie Bernaro,
Here online.
online. Thank you. Anita Brandt is absent with notice, and Amy Brennan is here. And Rich Capola. Thank you. Rita Chatri, absent with notice. Valerie De La Rosa. John Paul DeVerna. Actually,
He's no longer with us.
has now resigned. And Chris Dignas. And Amar Fitzgerald. And Stella Fitzgerald. And Cormac Flynn, absent with notice. Susan Gammy. Thank you. David Gruber,
Present online.
online. Thank you. Ann Hager, absent with notice. Julian Horkey. Thank you. Wayne Quadler. Thank you. Zach Pizzazz, absent with notice. Susan Kent.
Here.
Thank you. Ryder Kessler. Thank you. Janine Kiley. Thank you. Ivy Kwan Carson, absent with notice. Patricia Laria. Thank you. Michael Levine. Thank you. Ed Ma,
We heard him.
online. Matthew Metzger. Thank you.
Hello, yes, Edma here.
Thank you, Ed. And Daniel Miller. Thank you. Erica Olson. Thank you. Juan Osario. Not here yet. Okay. Brian Pape is here. And Donna Raftery. Thank you. Lois Rakoff. Absent with notice. Bo Riccobono. Absent with notice. Zach Roberts. Thank you. Garcia Sands. Thank you. Shirley Secunda. Thank you. Kristen Shea.
Absent with notice.
Shea. Kristen Shea is absent with notice. Frederica Siegel. Thank you. Emma Smith. Thank you. Dr. Shirley Smith.
Here.
Thank you. Chanel Spence.
It's really deep.
Yes, thank you. Chanel Spence. Online. Thank you.
Here.
Susan Wittenberg. Thank you. Anthony Wong. Thank you. Cheryl Wu. Absent with notice. Eugene Yu. Absent with notice.
And do we have a quorum? Excellent, thank you. Okay, so let's now turn to Councilmember Botcher, who is online.
Happy summer, everyone. It's great to see you virtually. So happy to be here. Want to update you today on some pieces of legislation that were passed by the City Council that didn't get a lot of press, but they're quite significant in my opinion. The first was a bill passed at the end of last month by the City Council, sponsored by Lynn Schulman. I was a prime co-sponsor of that bill, and it relates to the proliferation of illegal cannabis shops. And what this legislation does is makes it illegal to knowingly rent to a store illegally selling cannabis. And the way it would work is that a landlord will be, if their tenant is found to be illegally selling cannabis, they will be notified. And this would probably happen, the bill takes effect in 2 days. This will most likely happen in the joint inspections that happen with the interagency task forces that we know so much about. The landlord will be given a notice, and then upon a follow-up inspection, if the tenant is still found to be selling cannabis. And if the landlord is not shown to have taken any meaningful action to evict the tenant, there will be a first fine of $5,000. If upon a third occurrence, if the selling continues and the landlord has still not been able to show any meaningful action to evict the tenant, there will be a $10,000 fine. And I'm hopeful that this will be a tool that could be used to really help, number one, discourage these tenants from getting leases in the first place. But secondly, helping to dislodge some of these illegal establishments so we can truly have a successful, vibrant, comprehensive legal system that's working the way it's supposed to work, so the people who are supposed to get the licenses and are able to succeed. Two more pieces of legislation relating to our fight against the mental health crisis in New York City. And these two pieces of legislation that we passed are meant to address gaps in the continuum of care, because as we know, and as we've talked about a lot with Community Board 2, people are getting taken to the emergency room repeatedly. They're cycling in and out of the emergency room, having suffered mental health crises, and they're right back out into the street and into the shelters. One bill sponsored by Councilmember Keith Powers and co-sponsored by me will require the city to create 4 additional medical respite centers, crisis respite centers. And what they are places for people to go, and they're really ideal for after the emergency room, a place for someone to go and get health care, get nursed back to health, get medical treatment, and stay while we link them into more permanent housing. Right now, a lot of people are going back into the shelters, they're going back into the street, and their health and their mental health is deteriorating. So these medical respite beds are in short supply, and we really need the city to quicken its efforts to build them up, which is what this legislation is about. The next bill relating to mental health is about clubhouses. Clubhouses like Fountain House are community centers for people with serious mental illness, places for them to go and find opportunities for friendship, vocational opportunities, therapy, places to be and places to find community, because you could do everything else right. And we forget that people need things to do all day. They need a community. We can't expect people to stay in their apartments and lay in bed watching TV all day. We need them to have meaningful opportunities and combat social isolation. Unfortunately, there's very few clubhouses in New York, and the waiting list is huge. So this would require the city to establish 5 new clubhouses. And I'm excited about this because I believe this will really go a long way in helping to address the mental health crisis in New York. I want to tell you about a legislation that I introduced last month that relates to the urban forest canopy, as we call it. And this legislation, our urban forest legislation, will require the Parks Department, in consultation with other city agencies, to develop a urban forest master plan to achieve 30% tree coverage in New York City. 30% of the area in New York City covered by tree coverage. And it's so important as we talk about the heat emergencies that we're facing and we're going to be facing in the future, the climate emergencies we're going to be facing, the air quality, the stormwater runoff, the native birds and native insects who need our help. It all relates to that. And I'm hoping we'll be passing that bill soon. Incidentally, in the budget, I allocated a few $100,000 for more street trees. So send in your locations for empty tree pits and places where there may not be a tree pit and you'd like to see one, send it in through 311. Finally, on Tuesday, I'm having a informational Zoom. I do these Zoom forums. We've been trying to think of a name for them, but for right now, let's just call it an online Zoom forum. And this one is with the rat czar, Kathleen Karate, who just seems fabulous. I did a walkthrough with her, and Valerie came out to the village, Chelsea and Hill's Kitchen. So stay tuned for that email that will be going out tomorrow. That's just a few of the things going on.
Are there questions? Yes, Rocio. Let's give you a mic, please.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. I have two questions for you, please. Number one is, besides the penalties imposed on property owners, what penalties will be imposed on the tenants that are conducting illegal substances, cannabis, or other illegal products business? And the second question is, will the government help property owners to expedite the cases in the court system? As we may know, courts are very backed up and it takes months and months to get a case calendared for appearance.
So the state legislature at the end of the session, and if Deborah is still there, Assemblymember Glick, she could perhaps talk about the laws that were passed. But at the end of the legislative session, a suite of laws were passed to significantly ramp up the penalties for operating an illegal cannabis business. And they are pretty stiff. I mean, I believe like they have fines like $10,000 a day or something like that. I don't have all the details on them. I'm Googling it as I talk to you. But they also bring in the state tax department. And those laws just took effect recently. So we're hoping that with all of these combined efforts, they really help address the illegal market. And I'm going to look for that list of laws that were passed by the state legislature and send it over, because it's pretty substantial. And as far as the courts go, you're right about that it's a process. The good news about the city council legislation is the landlord just has to show that they're making the effort and that the process is ongoing. The court system, the way that the court system is so overwhelmed is a whole other issue that needs to be addressed also.
Susan Wittenberg has a question.
Hi, Eric. Thank you.
Hi.
Just a quick follow-up. Like, I appreciate everything that you've been discussing about the illegal shops, but so far, even we read these huge fines. They raided two places. They're like owned by group. A group owns multiple places, and they shut down two, one near us and one in the East Village, and confiscated hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of goods. People were waiting online to get in the minute the cops left. And so it just seems like such an overwhelming problem. When you hear things like $10,000 fines based on what they're making, it you don't feel that hopeful. I mean, it just seems like, and look at Washington Square, even like the little vendors. I mean, nobody wants increased policing anywhere, but we're just losing the tax money and hurting the new businesses that are legal. I hope this is effective. We're watching. Thank you.
Okay.
You were a little soft, but the previously, what I believe you might have said is that the cost of that a lot of these businesses have chalked it up to the cost of doing business, and they're making so much money that these fines haven't been sufficient to shut them down. That is what these new penalties were meant to address. And I'm just looked it up. The fines are up to $20,000 a day under these new laws. And they could also, it gives them power to seek injunctions to close the legal stores. And Mar Fitzgerald, who's there, the expert on all this, could speak to this also. But now that these laws are just recently taking effect, we are waiting and hoping that they will begin to see the results of it.
Oh, we have one. Okay, please,
Hi.
it's Dr. Smith.
Hi, Eric, how are you?
Hi.
Thank you for all the work you're doing. Can you share with us what you personally and other members of the council are doing about affordable housing?
This is one of my top issues next to mental health and sanitation, because the future of New York is in danger. And we are facing what I believe is an existential crisis if we don't take significant action on housing. I am in my council district and working with all our community boards at every opportunity to create large amounts of affordable housing. In Community Board 2 in our district, we've got the Hudson Street lot on Hudson and Houston. But in Community Board 4, we are the community board, in partnership with my colleagues and I, put out a plan that will create like 30,000 units of housing, and over 10,000 of those will be affordable units. And we're talking about many thousands of units of housing. Unfortunately, even if all that housing was built, it would be only a drop in the bucket for what we need in New York City. And it's so important that all my colleagues on the city council and all elected officials in New York City and around the state do everything they can to build as much housing as possible, because it's estimated that we might need to build like 500,000 units of housing over the next decade in order to stabilize rents. Because over the last decade, we had over 630,000 people net population gain in New York. That's the population of Detroit. We only built like 210,000 units of housing. So you don't have to be an economist to know that that will result in rents going up. And unfortunately, they are estimating that we're going to have that kind of population growth in the next decade. What is going to happen if we don't create more housing? And I have to tell you, in the last year, housing production has basically dried up. I think, if I'm not mistaken, in the month of May, there was like 500 apartments of housing in the entire borough of Manhattan, the permits pulled. And a lot of this, unfortunately, depends on action from Albany. And I know that our state legislators have been fighting to come up with a package of bills, including good cause eviction, which would protect the existing tenants, and also another replacement for 421A that a big percentage of rental buildings used to finance their buildings, and all kinds of things that will help encourage more housing growth, including in the suburbs, because we should be building large amounts of housing along the Long Island Railroad. Those big parking lot, those big park and ride parking lots in Long Island should have housing. Those would be great housing options for New Yorkers. So I and many of my colleagues are working hard on this at the City Council. Speaker Adams has shown leadership and introduced legislation that would set targets for each council district on housing production. And that would really help get a lot of our colleagues to the table who represent districts that really haven't built much housing at all. Some of my colleagues actually lost population in the last 10 years. They have vast amounts of land with a lot of single family homes and a lot of industrial lots that could provide more housing for New Yorkers. So it's one of the most, if not the most important issue facing New York City. And if we don't get it right, we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Thank you. Thank you, Council Member. Our next speaker is State Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel, but I do want to let everybody know we were asked to try to wrap this up by 9 o'clock or as close to it as possible. So yes, but everybody came out to talk. So Brad, why don't you take it away?
Oh, thank you, Susan. Good to see everyone. I like this virtual setup. I'll be very quick. Thank you for Deborah's and Eric's comments. Wanted to let you know that I've introduced legislation along with the Chelsea Assembly member, Tony Simone, to regulate and license commercial e-bikes. We've all seen those in different parts of our Senate district, which runs from Christopher Street all the way up to 103rd. E-bikes kind of taking over lanes, taking over sidewalks, going the wrong way. And the delivery companies are making a lot of money off of them, off of these workers. And there's really very little to no enforcement of the rules of the road as it pertains to e-bikes. So our plan is to issue licenses for the riders who circulate on behalf of these delivery apps. More on that front, but I wanted to let you know that that's a bill that we've introduced in addition to legislation that I carry to require insurance minimums for the delivery apps, as well as increasing the fines for hit and runs when the operator is on a scooter or e-bike. Makes no sense that there's a differential between a hit and run for a vehicle versus an e-bike. We're going to hopefully with this bill make that equitable. Second, I want to let you know that I put some money from the state Senate into accessible transit wayfare, and this will allow people with certain disabilities to hopefully ride our subway system. There's some of that available to be seen, I think, at the West 4th station, but I put some money into the station at Lincoln Center, and we had an announcement of it on the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act on July 18th. Third, on the issue of illegal cannabis shops, like my colleagues, looking forward to seeing the legislation that we passed in Albany go into effect. We have added money for an additional 37 Office of Cannabis Management staff to carry out the enforcement that Councilmember Botcher mentioned. He's right. The fines start at $10,000 per day and rise to $20,000 per day for the most egregious conduct. Landlords who permit unlicensed shops on their premises could be on the hook for $10,000 a day fines as well. And it allows OCM to conduct inspections of businesses, inspect the products, allows them to seize cannabis from unlicensed businesses, seek state court orders, and also empowers the Department of Taxation and Finance. I hear the issue about courts and backlogs, which is another interest of mine. As you may know, I'm the chair of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate, and I recently met with the new chief administrative judge on this very issue. We have added new judges to the courts, 20 across the state, 8 in New York City, also for family court, because there have been really outrageous backlogs in family court, which has resulted in family separation, which is outrageous. And we're hoping that these new judges will help move cases along. We have a new relationship with the Office of Court Administration with a new chief judge, Rowan Wilson, having been nominated and confirmed by the Senate in the last few months. So we're looking forward to a productive relationship there. And that also includes new work with Midtown Community Court, which is the nation's first problem-solving court, which addresses issues like mental health, recidivism around shoplifting, addiction, and some other quality of life crimes. We had a meeting there, a number of our colleagues, actually just this week, and we're trying to get more resources to Midtown Community Court so they can do their work better. And wanted to acknowledge that we, back, I guess it was 2017, I wrote a report about double-decker buses and the problems they pose to the public. These are the double-decker tour buses. You know, there was a crash last week that sent 32 people to the hospital on the Upper East Side. I'm going to make a renewed effort to get my legislation introduced and passed that's going to require the bus operators to have the same standards for tour buses as they have for every other bus. They're at a much lesser and looser regulatory standard than, say, an MTA bus. That shouldn't be the case. That's a few things I'm working on. Caroline Wexelbaum, my very able colleague, is there in person with printed out copies. Imagine that, printed out board reports. I haven't seen those in, I don't know, years. But she has some with her.
Okay, that's great. Oh, I do see it. Rocio does have a question.
Great to see you, Brad.
Nice to see you.
Thank you for coming. My question is very simple. Will you consider extending this bill to include bikes that are just regular bikes that are just as dangerous as e-bikes? Many people that I know personally have been injured very badly with bikes, regular bikes, and nothing happens to them. There is no compensation for the victims of these bikes that run you over and just leave. By the time the police come, nobody knows where they are. What's going to happen?
Well, the bill currently is drafted for commercial e-bikes because in this instance, we see a real profit motive on the part of the people who are basically paying for these bikes to be out on the street. In many cases, as you note, scaring the hell out of pedestrians and sometimes injuring them severely. And in worst cases, there have been a couple of fatalities that I'm aware of. So we're starting with the e-bikes because they're the most egregious. That's often how we draft legislation, Rocio, in Albany, is try to define the problem and address a piece of it. But certainly the issue of e-bikes is foremost in my mind. It's the complaint we hear about most. When it comes to regular bicycles, I would suggest that cars are still far more dangerous. And that's why I want to pass our legislation called Sammy's Law, which I got through the Senate this year, but not the assembly, unfortunately, that would allow New York to set its own speed limits. Right now, Albany controls speed limits in New York City, which should not be the case.
Ryder. Okay, we need a microphone for him, please.
And just so you know that if, please say your name, your first and last name when you speak, and if you want to be seen by the people on Zoom, you need to either be in the very front here, or I don't know if we're getting on camera from that spotlight, but just so you know.
Thanks. This is Ryder Kessler. Thank you, Senator. I wanted to ask if there's legislation you're advancing to address the streetscape issues that could make biking safer for pedestrians and bikers. You know, there are very few places for bikers to go, whether they're e-bikes or conventional bikes, to safely travel. 10 bikers have been killed this year so far. It's on track to be the deadliest year for bikers in New York. Last I checked, there were 19,000 miles of car lanes in the city, but 545 miles of protected bike lanes. Unprotected bike lanes are filled with double parkers all the time. It's not really an option. So I hear this from pedestrians who want, like myself, who want bikes off the sidewalk, but also from conventional bikers who want e-bikers in a separate space. But, you know, we can work for years to develop a plan for something like McGinnis Boulevard, where we're going to take 4 car lanes and make 2 of them bike lanes, and then that can get the plug pulled on it after years of work. So we need to act fast, it seems, to have space for bikes to actually safely traverse the streets, ideally with separate space for regular bikes and e-bikes. But, you know, it seems like just bringing the hammer down on bikes without actually addressing the streetscape issues that caused the problem in the first place is, you know, putting a Band-Aid on something that's a deeper wound. So I'm curious to your thoughts about that. Thank you.
No, I hear you on that, Ryder. I'm a co-sponsor of the Complete Streets legislation in Albany that would provide money for street design features to localities and funding for construction and improvements, including bike lanes. That passed the Senate. It's been strongly supported by Transportation Alternatives. It did not pass the Assembly. I hope we can pass it through the Assembly next year. But that's the initiative at the state level that I'm most familiar with that addresses your concerns, which are totally valid.
Thank you.
Okay. I can't, who is that? I'm sorry, we only accept questions from the board. You had, if you had an option to sign up to speak. I'm sorry, sir, no. To be elected, we only accept questions from the board. Okay, and I do not see any more hands, so we're done with the questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Let's go to, we're in public session. So Valerie, why don't you take it over?
Thanks so much. We have 4 people that signed up to speak. So I'm going to start with who's in the room. Joseph Reaver on Elizabeth Street Garden, followed by Ann Mitchelltree, Lisa Pekulski, and then we'll go online to Zach Weinstein.
And just to remind our speakers, they each have 2 minutes.
Hi, everyone. Thanks to the community board for having me. I signed up a little bit last minute. I'm sure most people in the room have heard that the appellate division of the state Supreme Court overturned our victory in the lower state Supreme Court. We are in the process. We held a press conference shortly after the news. So we're in the process of appealing that decision, and that goes to the highest court, the Court of Appeals. There's a 30-day time period that we do have to make that appeal, or actually we technically have to ask for permission for the appeal because it was a unanimous decision from the state Supreme Court, the 5-panel judges. So we're fighting that. We're still very much active. I do want to bring to the board's attention and everyone in this room that if you've been following it closely, or really for those who may have been on the peripheral end of it, if this decision does pass through the Court of Appeals, it will have severe implications to environmental review across the city and state regarding secra and secra, one with an S, one with a C. So this should be alarming to anyone who has anything to do about open space, about development and environmental review regarding any development, because it will weaken environmental review and environmental impact statements on a city and statewide level. So we would like to meet with the community board, possibly the executive committee and the working group designated for the garden, and further discuss how the community board can be supportive. We're going beyond just this community board as well. And we're meeting with environmentalist groups across the city and the state who have addressed and reached out to us with concern about the environmental implications regarding environmental impact statements. So it is very concerning for developments, because developers, no matter what the development is, will use this case law if it does pass through the Court of Appeals, and they will use it and it will set legal precedent, because this is quite a high profile case. Obviously, just always here to reiterate that
Joseph, if you want to wrap up, that's right at the 2 minutes. So if you just want to wrap up, thank you.
we're always in favor of affordable housing. We're just trying to figure out a solution that does not come at the cost of green open space. And so we're working with alternatives such as 388 Hudson. This is obviously the community board is very familiar with and leading that. There's 2 Howard Street, which should be much more at the front end of the discussion as well. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Do we have any questions from board members?
I don't see him.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Ann Mitchelltree. Maybe you can just state your name before you speak one more time.
Hi, I'm Ann Mitchelltree. I have a full-time job in that hermetically sealed nursing home that we've been talking about. I am a COVID survivor, and I'm happy to report that all of our staff are very, very well equipped with PPE. And frankly, I'm just really glad to be here. This is my first community board meeting in 3 years. So I know you want to share that happiness with me. Here's my statement. This is difficult but necessary to mention again that today Manhattan is under an air quality alert due to high ozone levels. I must tell you that a tragic mistake has been made in approving the Jamrock Jerk, authentic Jamaican jerk, New York City's first legally permitted mobile food cart equipped with smokers and grills necessary to produce the authentic Jamaican jerk experience. This government, our New York City government, has consistently made wrong decisions, creating a health hazard, poor air quality in our city. First, the city was flooded with Uber car drivers, which increased our automotive air pollution. Additionally, skyscrapers, 2 tall buildings were approved, which have created a walled canyon, trapping stagnant air in our streets. Finally, a food cart smoker was approved, creating dense smoke spreading quickly through the streets. These 3 mistakes have worsened the air quality in Manhattan. This poor air quality will not be eased by congestion pricing. Congestion pricing will only hurt Manhattanites in their wallets. We need to stop building the 2 tall skyscrapers. We need to stop approving these smoking food carts.
And
yes.
we're right at the 2 minutes, so if you'd like to wrap up.
Okay, I
Thank you.
spoke directly with the Jamrock Jerk. My food, 2 minutes went fast. While it was emitting massive amounts of smoke, the worker told me that the Board of Health has visited the Jamrock Jerk food cart at this location and has approved this operation. So I need somebody from the community board to work with me to figure out how this much smoke got approved in this world in which we live now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Lisa Pakolsky. Lisa Pakolsky, are you here? And then we had someone else that signed up that I did not write their name as concerned citizen. Would you like to speak? If you could state your name, please, and the microphone for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, Community Board 3 and neighbors.
We are
Community Board
Community
2.
Board 2.
Yes, I'm from 3, but I'm very glad to be here too. And I'm very glad you've let me speak as a concerned citizen. And I'm just going to follow up what Ann Mitchell-Tree said. As you see, the air quality in the beginning of July was unacceptable, and it's continuing to be unacceptable. It even made it to the cover of the Daily News. And I'm very saddened by the fact that millions and millions of acres are burning in the north, and that air is funneled down here to New York City. And even with all that extra smoke from Canada, they still feel it's necessary to blow off 50,000 shells for the 4th of July, adding more smoke to the city. The exploding e-bike batteries burning buildings down, the dust and diesel fumes from construction sites, 100,000 vehicles surging through the city. And now to add to that, I'm confounded, as Madam Mitchell-Tree is, by the fact that how could a new street vendor with this great idea, let's smoke the food, be allowed to have a license with zero emission control features on this vendor vehicle. And it's just confounding me. But I'm very grateful that we have a community board where the citizenry can vent and this very combustible topic, but we really don't need more smoke. And in the old days, they used to smoke fish and meats, but not on the street. This is a chimney coming out of this truck on Astor Place, spewing smoke into the downtown 6 subway station.
Can you
Across,
please wrap it up? We
I
are
will
at
wrap it
time.
up.
Thank you.
Into the Tuesday farmers market at Astor Place, into the newsstand across from it, and the tenants that live above it can't even open their windows because of the smoke issue. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Next, we have Darlene Lutz, and then we will go online to Zach Wine.
Hey.
Oh, we
We
have some
have
questions. I apologize. Carter Booth, and can you please use the microphone?
Where is this food stand located?
Shirley, I'm sorry, I called on.
The food stand is located on Astor Place in front of the Starbucks, which is 13-25. And behind it at number 26 Astor Place is the Chase Manhattan Bank. And it's at the downtown 6 subway station location.
Can you pass the microphone to Carter?
I've got it, thanks. I was also gonna suggest that you reach out to Village Alliance.
Thank you.
the Business Improvement District there and make them aware of that problem.
Thank you so much. And if everyone could, if they notice the smoke, if they would make a 311 complaint, we can only hope that someone will follow up on it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Next, we have Darlene Lutz.
I see what you mean about the spotlight. Good evening, everybody. Darlene Lutz, First Precinct Community Council. I'm here to say we don't have a meeting this month or next month because it's National Night Out. On August 1st, the First Precinct is holding our whoop-de-doo at the South Street Seaport, the plaza between Piers 16 and 17. Come on down. It's between 6 and 8 p.m. We will have our electeds there, a lot of the white shirts, as they call them, a lot of the other government, for everybody to meet and chat and bring your problems to. They all want to hear from us. So I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. Can we restart the timer, please? Next, we'll go to, do we have any questions for Darlene before I go to? No. Okay, great, thank you. Next, we're gonna go to Zach Weinstein, who is on Zoom.
Hi, is my microphone working?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, fantastic. My name is Zach Weinstein. I'm with Save Gansevoort. Just wanted to provide a quick update on the status of the three-story tall Link NYC 5G towers that I'm sure folks have heard about. Several thousand of these towers are planned for the city, and 9 of them are currently planned for Community Board 2. As you probably know, the towers have to undergo a federal review called a Section 106 review to determine if these huge structures will have an adverse effect on neighboring historic properties or districts. CityBridge, the applicant, initially attempted to evade this review and even built some 70 towers elsewhere in the city despite the lack of a review until the FCC demanded that they comply with the law. The review for the initial batch of several hundred towers started in mid-May. Not surprisingly, given CityBridge's unfortunate history with the whole rollout of these towers, the review process so far has been a chaotic mess. There was no initial communication with consulting parties such as Village Preservation and Save Ganswort and many other preservation organizations about how the review was structured or even that the review had started. Confusion about timelines and deadlines, confusion about whether various groups had been granted consulting party status, confusion about how to submit comments. Some consulting parties had to make repeated efforts to obtain the submission packets that contain the information about the applications for the towers, so forth and so on. Another issue is that the review is being conducted on a tower by tower basis, so that SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Organization Office, and the preservation organizations are being flooded with hundreds of applications. As a result, SHPO a few weeks ago submitted a letter to CityBridge asking that the review be halted until the problems can be resolved. And a coalition of preservation organizations sent a similar letter. What we're hearing now from CityBridge is that the review will in fact be halted until they can at least try to address the problems that they've created. They are planning to withdraw a bunch of the current applications, including the 3 in the West Village, and will resubmit them in 30 to 60 days. They've also gotten rid of the consulting company that was originally helping them with this review and have hired a new consultant. So the upshot of all this is it looks like the Section 106 review is likely to resume around the beginning of September. There have been huge problems so far. The FCC and the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation have essentially acknowledged that fact. SHPO has been extremely concerned about it and has been, I think, very helpful in trying to force the applicant to address those problems. And we shall see what happens, but stay tuned. And yes, it's going to be an interesting process. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach. I do
Do
not
we have any
see.
questions for Zach about 5G? Great. Is there anyone who signed up to speak that's in the room or on Zoom that did not get called on? Otherwise, I will close the public session. Great, thank you, Mark. Susan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Valerie. At this point, I will take a motion for the adoption of the agenda. And a second? All in favor? Okay, I assume that there are no no's, no abstentions. Okay, now let us turn to reports from our elected officials reps. We're going to start with the folks who are here in the flesh. Biani, where are you? Oh, Biani. Oh, it's only Tevin. I'm sorry. Tevin Williams from Congressman Goldman's office. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see Stacy. Why don't we give Stacy a microphone? Or use that microphone.
Oh, no, that's zero. Okay, thank you.
A little away. Okay. I'm Stacy Johnson from Senator Kavanaugh's office. Nice to see you in person. This is fun. I don't have much. I just wanted to go over a couple of things. We are tabling at most of the NYCHA Family Days coming up in the next few weeks. Senator Kavanaugh will be attending all of the precincts for the National Night Out on August 1st. We're hosting a couple of Omni info sessions because the MTA is phasing out the MTA cards that you're used to using. And these are particularly helpful for seniors. So we're doing a lot of Omni sessions, info sessions at senior centers. So if you know of a senior center that needs one of these info sessions, I'm happy to arrange that. We have one August 3rd at Southbridge Towers and one September 20th at University of Settlements Neighborhood Center. I know those aren't necessarily in CB2. That's why I'm saying if you have suggestions for other venues, I can help get that going. There's a summer reading program through the Senate office. No matter who your senator is, you can go to their website. If you go to Senator Kavanaugh's website, you can have your kids write a little, basically say which 3 books they've read over the summer and write a little blurb about the books. And then they will receive a certificate from the senator. So if you have kids and you want to encourage them to read, that could be a fun opportunity. And then just also following up on the illegal cannabis enforcement, reminding everyone that if you have an illegal cannabis shop to report, that you should do that to OCM. At the OCM website, you can report an incident, which can just be a venue. And then you can follow up with our office and we'll try to keep an eye on that enforcement. That's it.
Thank you. We have a question from Susanna, and I need a microphone, so otherwise our audience can't hear you.
I just wanted to request that you reach out to Greenwich House. They're our district's major provider of senior services. They have 4 senior centers. So please reach out to them for the Omni training. Thank you.
I will. I know Glick's office did one there, but it doesn't mean that we can't do another one before the end of the year.
Okay, seeing no more questions, Robin Forrest has to leave soon, so we will go to you next.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Susan. It's hard to believe that you're back in person. I'll be there soon. I just have a couple of quick announcements. I know that you're on a tight schedule. It was a big week in the city for the New York City Police Department. We have a new commissioner, Edward Caban. He's the first Latino to be appointed to this role. We new first deputy, Tanya Kinsella, who has a long history of police enforcement. And Rebecca Weiner will be the Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism, again, the first woman in this role. You probably all know, and I won't go into too much detail unless you ask me, but Manhattan Open Streets starts on the 5th of August. It will take place on 3 Saturdays, August 5th, August 12th, and August 19th. The biggest change from prior years is that the open streets will extend further north than they have in the past, and they're going to go as far as 125th Street between Adam Clayton Powell and Central Park North. There are details on the NYC Gov website under open streets. I'm happy to detail, but I know you're under time pressure. So I appreciate the early announcement and wish everybody a great rest of the summer.
Thank you, Robin. I see a question from Matt.
Ms. Forrest, it's Matt Metzger. I beg your pardon if I missed you before, but have you come before, and can we expect you at every meeting?
I have come many times before.
Awesome.
And I try to give an update at each of the full board meetings. I can put my contact information in the chat if you'd like to have it. I'd be glad to share that.
That would be fantastic. No, we love having the mayor's office here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Tevin's ready. Go ahead.
Hi, it's good to see everyone. This is my first in-person community board meeting. So this has been really cool. Didn't get to do this in Brad's office. I'll be brief. I have 3 quick things. First and foremost, I want to talk about something that was really important to the congressman. Just this week, the Democrats introduced their first landmark package of bills, and his first bill was the Early Voting Act, which was included in that voting package. So with the Early Voting Act in this package, it's 14 days of in-person early voting, makes election officials prioritize polling places, and then also makes every state across the country, once you receive your ballots, within 14 days, it has to be scanned. So actually, fun fact, one of the biggest states that does this the best is Florida. So we are actually trying to catch up with them a little bit and get this nationally. So I just want to say that that's been the priority in Capitol Hill right now in the House. And on the Senate side, it has been labeled Bill number 2. So it is a huge priority for the Democrats this time. Number 2 I want to speak about is the Supreme Court. As all of you know, there's been some wild decisions that have come out from there. The congressman has led a letter to the Chief Justice this past week, and this would call the Chief Justice to establish an ethics council, and then also an independent investigative body, because the Supreme Court is the only judicial branch that does not have a code of ethics. So this is something the congressman has looked to establish. And then finally, as I know all of you have spoken about the issues across your neighborhoods with mental health illness, we joined Senator Gillibrand just a couple of weeks ago to fight for people with serious mental health illnesses. And so we introduced a bill called Strengthening the Medicaid for Serious Mental Illness Act. And this creates a new package of services under Medicaid, which will be all encompassing for anyone that's admitted for that. Thank you all for all the work that you do. This is obviously a near and dear. Look out for that. Thank you.
And Dr. Smith has a question.
Thank you. Thanks so much for, giving us information on the meeting with the congressman. I sort of missed it because you actually didn't give enough time, so keep that in mind. So people who are working can also, it's their personal time to also take advantage.
Sure thing.
Okay, I do not see any more questions. So we're good. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to folks who are online. Biani from Councilmember Rivera's office. And after that.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I'll try to keep it brief since I know we're strapped for time. Last week, Councilmember Rivera passed Intro 193, which will create an immediate hazardous violations for the existence of lead-based paint in any common area of a multiple dwelling where a child under the age of 6 resides. On July 6th, we had a helmet fitting distribution with the DOT, and we provided a total of 447 helmets. We are also having a reduced fare session at Hip Hip Library on August 7th at 4 p.m. I know this is not on CB2, but feel free to reach out to me and request an info session in CB2. Also, the fiscal year 2024 budget just passed, and I just wanted to share some of the budget allocations specifically for CB2. 202.3 million capital funding was provided for improved lighting on 14th Street from 3rd to 6th Avenues, 3.7 million for cultural organizations, 6.5 million for capital schools, 1.25 million for capital for housing, including Michelama Housing and City Council District 2. Also, I wanted to make sure everybody's aware that the Astor Place Alamo Cube is back, and I think everybody should go and pass by and give it a nice spin. I'm gonna put my information on the chat as well as a copy of our board report. Thank you.
I do not see any questions, so thank you, Biani. Jasper Scott from Assemblymember Lee's office.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Thank you for having me here tonight. I will keep this brief as well. About a month ago, the legislative session at the state level ended. So since then, we've kind of been switching all of our gears and our manpower to having a presence within the district. We just recently, as of this week, started tabling across the district, literally every single day. So we are out in the district tabling. This week, we're mostly on Grand Street. We'll continue to be doing this every single day. We will post the schedule for when we're out, probably a week or two ahead of time. So look at our channels for that. And, we use these as opportunities to connect with constituents and show them our resources and then sort of assess the needs at the local level when we head back to Albany next year. So we've also been doing work across the community to respond to some local emergencies after the tragic fire at 80 Madison Street last month, having to do with the unregulated lithium ion battery or the e-bike battery. We've been doing some workshops across the district to connect constituents to like fire prevention resources to try and prevent tragedies like that from happening again. We're open to doing more of those. We would like to do more of those. If you guys have any suggestions as to organizations or venues which we can do that at, feel free to contact us. We have been helping residents in public housing and across the district preserve the affordability of their apartments, specifically by connecting seniors and members of our community with disabilities to the SCREE and DREE programs to freeze their rent. And our constituent services team is continuing to provide that assistance. So please reach out to our office if you know anyone in need. We can provide multilingual assistance and we'd be happy to help. There are no events that we immediately have on the radar, although we will be tabling at all at some of the local precincts for National Night Out, as well as for all the NYCHA Family Days going on. So you can catch us there. And once again, you can find us on random corners around the district. We'd be happy to talk to you guys. Yeah, that's all for me. Thank you guys for listening.
Thank you, Jasper. I do not see any questions. So Peter, is Peter still here? Peter Say from the district attorney's office. He was here at the okay, he left. Thank you. Are there any more representatives for our elected officials? Then we are done with those reports. Great, thank you. Okay, let us see. Well, let's okay, my report. Try to make it fast. I want to thank everybody. We have made it through our first month doing hybrids, and all in all, we've done a pretty good job. I've gotten some very positive feedback. Yes, there have been some glitches, but last month's full board meeting really was a success. The officers got together and Valerie headed a post-mortem where we went over what happened, and we're hoping that it will just get better from here. One of our big difficulties is the fact that we do not meet in the same location month after month. Each location presents its own challenges, and of course, we're always in need of locations and backup locations. So again, I put out the request. If anyone has ideas, if anyone has relationships that we can call on to have, more places such as this lovely Sheen Center, it would be great. So please just contact Mark and let us know. Just to let you know, one of our members, John Paul Taverna, has resigned from the board. He has applied to become a public member of land use. So we will be getting a new member. And of course, we will let you know who that person is once the borough president selects them. At today's borough board meeting, we had a presentation by the Right to Counsel NYC Coalition, and they were discussing efforts to ensure that every person who's facing eviction is represented by counsel. Currently, New York City does have a right to counsel law. The problem is that while it is a New York City law, our court system is administered by the state. So it is hard there is no real enforcement. And what this coalition is currently attempting to do is get legislation passed on the state level. Since the end of the COVID emergency, 25,000 New Yorkers have faced eviction, and the estimate is that 80% of them would have won had they been represented by counsel. So hopefully our housing committee will look at this issue. The borough president has asked each of the community boards to take a look at this issue. And hopefully if we can support it, then the borough board can also support it. As the borough president mentioned, there are new training classes down the road. We will let you know when those become available. And one last item, the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs has announced a new initiative, the Neighborhood Award, which is designed to honor New York City residents who have quote unquote lived on the block. It recognizes the pillars of our community, which are those who have resided in the community and or served in a civic or tenant organization for the longest period of time. If you go to the nyc.gov website, the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit page, there is under the initiative tab, there is a nomination form. So I encourage everyone to visit if you have someone you would like to nominate for this award. And that's the end of my report. Certainly. Oh, let's get Michael first.
Thank you, Mark. Susan, you mentioned something at the executive committee that left me a few questions in my mind.
Okay.
You mentioned the appointment of a, not a subcommittee of landmarks, but a working group that would follow up on the Soho NoHo Chinatown zoning initiative because it related to landmarks issues. I thought you had mentioned that tonight. Could you tell us what that will do?
I don't recall mentioning that at executive. This is an informal group that is simply going to look at the designation of Soho NoHo as a National Historic District, and then it's going to remain in landmarks. It's just a group of people who are going to familiarize themselves with the law so that we can have a more informed discussion in landmarks.
Okay, I thought it was a separate committee.
It hasn't been established as a form. I think the word subcommittee was used, but there is no formal separate subcommittee. It's just a question of a couple of people then doing a presentation to the landmarks committee so that everybody is on the same page. Because if you remember, what happened was that it was an idea that was presented, but except for the person who was presenting it, people just weren't familiar with the situation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Rocio.
You mentioned evictions and what they're doing. My question is, did they discuss the one-shot deals for tenants who are taken to court for the lack of paying rent? I would like to know if they discussed what percentages of those that are evicted for failure to pay rent versus other issues with their leases.
Well, the short answer is no, that wasn't discussed. This was simply about a right to counsel and the fact that that so many people who end up in housing court do not have counsel. It is
They need
also,
money.
huh?
They need the money to pay the rent.
Well, and it's also an equity issue because this is largely, of course, impacting lower income members of the community and people of color. And what has happened is, and as the statistics showed, that it's the lack of counsel that is creating an uneven playing field. So that's the goal of the coalition, is simply to ensure that everybody who ends up in housing court has counsel. There was no discussion about why they were in housing court.
Yeah, that's too bad, because that's the issue is.
I would encourage you to visit their website, and let me see if I have, the website is righttocouncilnyc.org, and maybe there's information about it on there. Okay. And well, that's the end of my report. If there are no questions, then we will take the district manager.
Treasurer's report.
Oh, I'm sorry, you can go to the.
So this quarter's treasurer's report is for the fiscal year ending 2023. Street fair funds, we actually received more than we expected, $5,643. In in terms of other updates for numbers, personnel, staff, we got the latest numbers, but I'm expecting that to be updated just a little bit. No, that's the ending numbers. Okay, great. You might see higher than expected numbers in categories such as equipment. The office recently purchased some AV equipment and also some other meeting equipment as well. And then you have professional services. That's a big bulk because of our consultant that we had when our staff member was out for health reasons. And then we also have larger than expected tech services subscriptions because we had job posting services that we had to do for Finding Mark. And that's it for my report.
Great. Any questions? I see none. Okay, Mark.
Thank you very much. And apparently you got to speak right into this mic instead of over the top. So when you're giving your reports, you might want to keep that in mind. So thank you. I want to start with thanks to the folks who have welcomed us so warmly here at the Sheen Center. Forgive me for mentioning all their names that I've gotten so far. That's Mary Lou and David, the directors, Joe, the guy who really runs the tech, Christian, who's our guru today, and then MJ, Caitlin, Nella, and Matthew have been welcoming us as we come in. A lot of that wonderful equipment that we were able to buy in part because we didn't have a full staff for most of fiscal 23. So we spent whatever we could on a series of portable equipment to bring to various venues. As Susan was saying, we don't have one dedicated space that we can build and just use. You won't see any of that here because this is already so well equipped. So thank you to the Sheen Center and all those folks who have made this meeting possible. The Central Business District Tolling Program, also known as congestion pricing. The next phase is the installation of the poles that will be the detection of devices. We will have on our website the specific locations. They are basically at the western perimeter because we're landlocked in all other areas. Any questions on that, please see me offline. I'm glad to discuss. They are doing their best to repurpose or consolidate street furniture in those things instead of adding just one more thing on our sidewalks, which considering the width of some of our sidewalks is a good thing. We are entering that phase of the year where we are accumulating statements, narrative statements of district need and the associated budget priorities for them. The district managers spent lots of time this week as a group to try to consolidate and work with that to pose questions to agencies, and we're moving that forward. The committee chairs will receive in the next couple of weeks, in effect, the materials from last year and whatever support they need to move it forward for this year. They in turn may need their committees to assist. So that's a heads up to everybody. The fiscal year end, as Anthony had briefed us, saw us using whatever unspent funds we could for capital improvements. The 5G towers is very much on our radar screen at the district office. The one thing to know about that is that this section 106 review is only relating to the landmark structures in those areas. Now, half of our district is in one historic district or another. So it's not, so there is a wide swath that we're cutting, but there is, excuse me, it doesn't mean that they can't install in places that are outside of historic districts. Finally, the mayor's office is reaching out to the district managers to brief us on efforts to accommodate asylum seekers and their children. I know that's been going on for a while, but we applaud that they are reaching out to the community boards to make sure that we're a part of it. I'm sure there's a request coming at the other end of it, but that's the latest, and there'll be a meeting about that on Monday. I'll be glad to brief. Thanks very much. That's my report, unless there are questions. I see one. I'll repeat it. Go ahead. Or not.
You say that they're going to ask the community boards to help with the asylum seekers. Do you have any idea what kind of requests they'll make of us?
Right now, it's going to be a briefing on housing and the related impacts of the housing on businesses that surround the places that are the housing. My assumption is that at least they'll be asking us to use our networks to further outreach, but it may be more substantive than that. I'll find out on Monday morning.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, the question was, the question was live. Okay, good.
Okay, I see no more questions.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, now we are moving into business session and we will again take attendance.
Okay, Suzanne. Susanna Aaron. Natasha Vanasians.
Present.
Akila Asqui. William Benesh. Keen Berger. Carter Booth. Katie Bordenaro.
Here.
Anita Brandt is absent with notice. I am here. Amy Brenna, Rich Kekapolo. Valerie De La Rosa.
Here.
Chris Dignas. Mar Fitzgerald. Stella Fitzgerald. Susan Gammy. I think David Gruber left. Jillian Horke. Wayne Wadler. Susan Kent.
Here.
Ryder Kessler. Janine Kiley. Patricia Laria. Michael Levine. Edward Ma.
Here.
Matt Metzger. Daniel Miller. Where's my other page? Erica Olson. Juan Osorio.
He's absent.
He's still late. That's okay. Brian Pick. Donna Raftery. Zachary Roberts. Rocio Sands. Shirley Secunda. Frederica Siegel. Emma Smith. Dr. Shirley Smith. Janelle Spence.
Here.
Susan Wittenberg. Anthony Wong. Okay, great. We have quorum.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, at this time, I will ask for a motion to approve the June full board minutes. Thank you. And a second? And all favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, next is our resolutions from standing committees. We will start with landmarks.
Okay, we have two meetings. Do you want to do them separately, Susan, or together?
Whichever you prefer.
Okay, we'll just go, I'll do them all, and then if someone wants to be called out, it's called out.
That's fine.
The first meeting, first application, 16th Fifth Avenue, a DOT application to construct, maintain, and use electric snow melt system before the entrance of the building. CB2 Manhattan has no objection to the installation of the radiant heating cables beneath the pavement at 15 Fifth Avenue, provided that 2 tree pits are installed in front of the property. In the next resolution, would the Secretary please add in parentheses after the address Cherry Lane Theater, so it's identified to people. 3842 Commerce Street, applications to install new entry infill signage and repave certain areas. Recommend approval of the entry and box offices on historic style signs, historic painted colors, the sidewalk and entry paving. Denial of the intrusive banner sign above the entrance as detracting from the historic character of the building, and that measures be taken to conserve the painted sign on the lintel over the entryway. Denial of the modern light fixtures and recommends the existing fixtures be retained or replaced with historic and correct fixtures. 829 Greenwich Street, to alter the facade, insert a lot line window, construct a small rooftop addition, rooftop solar panels, canopy, serving to shade the roof deck. This is quite extensive. The summary is that we approved everything except the windows and their placement in the front facade. And we recommended that the structures on the rooftop be lightened in some way. They're visible, which we don't object to, but it's simply their visual weight against the sky. 661, 66, 665 Broadway and 228, 230 Mercer Street to replace north 665 Broadway storefront and add canopy replacement 228, 232 Mercer storefronts and add 228, 230 Mercer entrances. All of this were obviously constructed as separate buildings and have now been joined into one. The recommendation is to approve the restoration infill modification and 2 sets of stairs on Mercer Street. The canopy added above one of the show windows, provided that it does not have illumination below, and denial of LED lighting along each tread of the 2 Mercer Street stairs. The last application was laid over until next month, presumably.
Are there any questions on, yes, Susan?
This is just a typo. It's installed on.
Excuse me, I'll ask Susan Gammett to answer any questions. It's very hard to hear.
Okay, well, there are no questions, but Susan does have a typo to put in the corrected.
Yeah, it's just
The resolve on 16 Fifth Avenue should say 16 Fifth Avenue rather than 15 Fifth Avenue. Simple typo.
Okay, thank you. And if there's no objection, we will continue the practice of putting all of our resolutions into an omnibus. Okay, and so since there are no questions, we will move all of these landmarks resolutions into the omnibus. Okay, and sure. Next is quality of life.
No, we have another meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought. Go
Well,
ahead.
we're only just beginning, sorry. The second meeting, first application, number 1 Bond Street, did not make a presentation, so there's no resolution, and it's automatic that we don't make a recommendation, except that we recommend that the commission not hear it until we've made a recommendation, which they don't. 36 Perry Street, application of full renovation and vertical and horizontal enlargement of an existing 4-story townhouse and convert from a multifamily to single-family occupancy. Approval of the rooftop various things. Approval of a modest cellar excavation. It doesn't importantly reach near the property line and therefore is not a concern about the engineering aspects of it. That's always the key thing with excavation. Approval of the rear facade, upper floors, casement windows and French doors, which carry through the style of the lower floors. Denial of an asymmetrical lower floor enfrainment as destroying the symmetrical style of the building. 6 approve and 1 abstention. 122 Waverly Place, application to install a gate at the entrance steps and to excavate the rear yard to extend the cellar. This is a fault one, and I think I should just read it verbatim. Recommend that the commission staff reconsider the approval of a highly inappropriate tall spike fence at the areaway, and notwithstanding the tall fence in other quite different buildings in the district, instead recommend a fence more in keeping with a historic design of the building and typical to the district. Denial of the stair gate for its total lack of character and historic reference and its awkward placement with no attempt to integrate it into the building. Denial of any consideration by the commission of the application for the excavation and garden until the incomplete application is extensively revised, including accurate depiction of the conditions of the proposed work and the full engineering information explaining in detail the steps to be taken to ensure that the ongoing integrity of the subject property and the neighboring properties, and that this revised application is presented before a public hearing, meaning at the landmarks committee of this body for recommendation by the board to the commission. You can read why this is so extensive in the numerous whereas clauses, and enormous difficulties with this application. And that was unanimous also, yes.
Okay.
And Susan has also already spoken about the National Park Service involvement in Soho, so we
Okay.
have nothing better to report except that we're considering
Okay.
that we're finished.
Got it. And I see no questions. So all of the landmarks 1 and 2 will both go into the omnibus. Now we're ready for quality of life.
Susan, you're fading. I think you said there's nothing more.
I just said we're going to quality of life next.
Okay.
Hello. Okay, so we had 8 applications, 7 of them appear before us. You'll notice some of these have already passed. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But number 1, July 17th, MLK Scholars, Social Change Collaboration, West 4th, between Washington Square West and Green Street. That was a unanimous approval. Number 2, Nothing NYC, July 13th, Gansevoort between 9th Avenue and Washington Street. That was a recommended deny, 6-1 with 2 abstains and a recuse. Number 3, Burberry Summer Cart, Soho 23, Spring between Worcester and Green. Need to add the specific date on that. That's July 21st, 22nd. That was a unanimous approve. Number 4, Supergoop, August 5th, Supergoop Summer Roadshow 23, Broadway between Prince and West Houston. Sorry, I got to keep changing pages. That was a unanimous approve with 1 recusal. August 15th, number 5, Erie Gansevoort Plaza. That was a unanimous approve. Number 6, Technology Launch Event, August 16th, Gansevoort Plaza. That was no show deny, unanimous. Number 7, September 10th, SHM Fundraiser, Bond between Lafayette and Bowery, unanimous deny. And number 8 is the recurring San Gennaro Festival. Given its size, even though it's a recurring event, we still have them come before us. Unanimous approve with sort of suggestions and takeaways from last year. And then we had a number of FYI renewals, 9 through 17. Those were unanimous approve other than 11 and 13, and those were 7-1, or sorry, 8-1. And that's it. I mean, the other thing I would just note is we as a committee are sort of coalescing a little bit more around this concept of putting more overarching guidelines into place. And so if anyone has any sort of suggestions or is interested in being part of that conversation, please let us know. Part of that is because certain small events have only a 14 or 13-day lead time requirement. So in certain cases, it's almost impossible for us to comment on those. If we had something in place that was sort of more overarching, then we could still have some sort of comment because then it would just refer automatically to those policies. So again, that's sort of something we're talking about. If you want to be part of the conversation, please let me know.
Right. Okay, I do not see any questions for you, Will. Thank you. Okay, next is land use.
I'm going to be making the report by online.
Okay, Kate.
Thank you. Okay. Land use has 1 resolution this month. It's about 388 Hudson Street and the affordable housing that we are hoping and planning and advocating for, and sure we're going to get in the northern portion of that lot. So you can read the whereases. Therefore, be it resolved that the Community Board 2 strongly recommends that New York City HPD determine the zoning solutions that will maximize design flexibility and optimize the amount of affordable housing at 388 Hudson Street. The new building will be contextual with and sensitive to the Greenwich Village Historic District across the park. The new building includes a New York City Parks Department Recreation Center of at least 3 floors in the base of the building footprint. That HPD broaden its outreach to groups and individuals outside the community board, such as the block associations, some of the schools, local businesses. HPD aim to align its milestone schedule with CB2's schedule, so that we will have time enough to review any of their suggestions or reports, both on the committee level and for the full board. And that HPD share the draft RFP with CB2 for its review and feedback before it is finalized. And it was a unanimous, passed unanimously.
I do not see any, oh, Rich, please, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I should probably know this, Katie, but do you have a sense of how many floors the building would have?
Well, that's what we're talking about, zoning solutions. We don't know yet. We've talked about units. I'm trying to think. They've talked about 10 floors. Then there was something for 20 floors, and then there was another solution that might have been over 30 floors. They're still trying to figure out what the proper, what is a good zoning and solution there. And we're actively just, when they get a new solution, we're hoping, or new, I think we'll hear a menu of solutions. So each menu item gives us a little different number of floors. I'm sorry, I can't be more specific, but they're still in the planning stages on that.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Yes, sure. Dr. Smith? Yeah, people will have a hard time without a microphone.
Katie, do you know how many actual units of affordable housing this particular project would generate?
Well, the first variation that HPD suggested was about 100 units, and we felt that wasn't really high enough. The need is so dire, and we have so few places in our community board to get housing. So we've heard other variations now, more closer to 200, and we're also going to be talking about the mixture. I mean, is it studios, 1s, 2s, 3? How many bedrooms would be the right mixture for our community as well? So you might have in the same number of floors, it could be all studios and be one number, or be more of a mixture and be a different number. So I think that the committee is happier when we hear something like 200, but as I say, we're going to have to see what the mixture of sizes is in there too. Does that answer your question, Shirley?
It does. Will the committee then decide on the different sizes, like studios, 1 bedrooms, 3? Who will make that determination?
I think the committee will advise HPD on it, but the process is going to be that HPD is working on something called it's working on a report to bring together all the information from the community board's information, and then the groups and individuals, and then they send out a request for proposal to the developer, and that's when the building actually gets designed. And but what we're trying to do, why we want to see the RFP before it goes out, is that's when we're going to say, something about the apartment mix, unit sizes mix and, other elements.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Valerie.
Thank you. I was just going to point out that the deck that was presented by HPD is available on the CB2 website that has the different scenarios. It's under the April land use on the calendar, or if I have your number, I can text it to you now, or the Zoom chat if you're logged in. Thanks.
Could I just respond to that, Susan, please?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is very helpful. That deck is very helpful, but HPD has had, further discussions with city planning, the Department of Environmental Protection, and Parks. I don't think Parks is a little bit less, but they are having some other discussions which I think that deck will be revised. That deck is not final. So go and look at it. Everyone should look at it to get an idea of where they were in April, but even today, they have moved further along the spectrum.
Yes, it's changed quite a bit since then, actually. Okay, seeing no more questions. Thank you, Katie. Next is traffic and transportation.
So we have 3 resolutions unanimously approved. First resolution is requesting a study of the potential need for commercial metered parking on University Place between Waverly Place and East 13th Street, and the need for more regular metered parking on East 10th Street between University Place and Broadway. And the resolves are that CB2 requests DOT do a study of activities, conditions, and parking regulations on East 10th Street between University Place and Broadway, and on University Place between Waverly Place and East 13th Street to more equitably balance regular metered parking and commercial metered parking to better serve the delivery needs of the businesses on East 10th as well as on University. Further, recommends DOT work with the Village Alliance bid in reaching out to the businesses that receive deliveries on University Place and assessing the drop-off pickup needs and existing conditions. Asks that DOT consider modifying some of these streets' metered parking rules, both commercial and regular, to shorten the time allowed for using the metered parking in these locations in order to encourage more frequent turnover where the total parking period that's currently permitted is shown to be unnecessary. Further, strongly encourages DOT to thoroughly investigate the excessive placard parking in this area, formulate procedures to reduce its illegal use, and work with the NYPD in enforcing deterrence. Finally, urges DOT to conduct the requested study as soon as possible, share its findings and recommendations with CB2, and quickly implement its recommended improvements, especially those that support the needs of the small businesses on East 10th Street who depend on timely deliveries to maintain their operations. Okay, second resolution. This was in response to a request for a tour bus stop on the north side of East Houston Street between Bowery and Elizabeth Street. Okay, so therefore resolved. CB2, no objection to adding the requested sightseeing bus stop for pickups and drop-offs on the north side of East Houston Street from Bowery to Elizabeth Street to share with the already existing MTA M21 bus stop as long as its program remains the same as currently presented. Be it further resolved that CB2 emphasizes that should there be an alteration in the method of the ride tour bus operation, especially in the serving or consuming of food and alcohol, external LED lighting or signage, music or entertainment with activities on the street, CB2 would expect the applicant to return to CB2 in a new application for CB2 to review before going before DOT and other involved agencies for the changes. Third resolution, in response to an application for a revocable consent to construct an ADA accessible ramp at 2 Charles Street. Resolve, CB2 fully supports approval of a revocable consent to construct, maintain, and use an ADA accessible ramp and landing with steps and retaining wall, including steel guard railings, to replace an existing hydraulic lift at the entrance of 2 Charlton Street. And further, we say that we welcome the prospect of increased availability of ADA access in the CB2 community. And those are the 3. You're welcome.
I don't see any, I just want to point out, actually, traffic did not have a quorum.
Right.
So technically this is new business. But since she's already reviewed them, we will proceed. If there are any questions on this or any debate? Okay. Seeing none, we will move that into omnibus and then move on to SLA. Why don't you just take the one that Shirley's holding? You can, if you can stand right up front here too.
Okay. All right, so SLA 1 met on July 11th in person at Northwell Health. Thank you, Wayne, for arranging that. The first application, there were 16 applications and we had 9 resolutions and all the decisions were unanimous. Cabecera Cape, doing business as Cabecera at 261, 267 Canal Street in a food hall. That's a restaurant wine. That was denied unless with stipulations. Italia Like Locals, 171 Canal Street. It's a catering establishment on a 3rd floor. That was denied unless with stipulations. Little Lucky's LLC at 224 Lafayette. That's the old Jack's Wife's Frida space on premise for a restaurant. That's denied unless with stipulations. 6 Square Management LLC, doing business as Yuan and Cobra, 356 Bowery. That's an on-premise for a tavern, deny unless with stipulations. Astor Entertainment at 163 Bleecker. That's an on-premise for a restaurant. It's a restaurant music venue. That is the old Uncle Ted space, deny unless with stipulations. Uchi, New York at 206-210 Elizabeth Street and 204-206 Elizabeth Street. That's an on-premise for a restaurant, deny unless with stipulations. Some Young Guy, doing business as Chard, is a corporate change, a change in method of operation, and an alteration to an on-premise restaurant. That was denied, unanimous. Everything was unanimous. Piacer Enterprises at 352 Broome Street, a class change from tavern restaurant to an on-premise restaurant. They appeared in August 2021 with the application, and the full board recommended approval of that. So they need to refile a 30-day notice. They signed updated stipulations. They confirmed the principles hadn't changed. And so that was denied unless with stipulations. And then items 9 to 16 were either layovers or withdrawals. Should I? Questions on that one
Any questions
first?
or debate? Okay, none.
Okay. SLA 2 was held on July 6th. Same thing, in person at Northwell Health. We had 12 applications and 8 as resolutions, and all decisions were unanimous. 182 West 4th Hospitality at 182, 184 West 4th Street. That's an on-premise for a restaurant. That's the old Slaughtered Lamb space. And deny unless with stipulations. Uno Novo Auto Corp, doing business as Canto West Village. That's an on-premise restaurant. It was a change in method of operation to extend the hours and add sidewalk seating. That was denied, unanimous. White Horse Hospitality, there's a mistake in the resolutions. It should say doing business as Made in New York Pizza. 561 Hudson Street, that's a tavern wine. That was a deny, unanimous. 78 Fifth Avenue, Cabanillo, doing business as Ariston Flowers and Cafe at 78 Fifth Avenue. That's a tavern wine for a flower shop and ancillary cafe. That was deny. Delise and Saracen at 178 West Houston. That's a restaurant wine with a rear yard. that's being laid over for reconsideration. We heard the application, but they have changed it, so they're returning and, got back to us the day after the meeting. So they're coming in August. Carmine Street Beers at 52A Carmen Street. That's a tavern wine with an alteration to expand to the rear yard. That was a deny unanimous. Food Napoli doing business as Na Slice, 11 Waverly Place. That's a new restaurant wine in a previously unlicensed location. That was denied unless with stipulations. And then IOC Theaters, that was denied unless with stipulations. They just had to send in a new 30-day notice on that one, so we waived appearance. Items 9 through 12 were either layovers or withdrawals. Any questions?
Questions, debate? None. Okay, thank you, Donna. Okay, thank you, Donna. We will next do cannabis licensing, which is also new business. But I do want to point out to everyone that going forward, you see there is committee and working group reports will now be included in the full board packet so that they can be posted as well. Mark does need it. Yes. Oh, good, thank you.
A hand up. I have a hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Katie. Go ahead.
That comment from the audience was inaudible on Zoom.
That was
What was
just
it?
that there was a numbering error on two of the resos. That'll be corrected.
Thank you.
Am I good? Go right ahead.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So we submitted this letter in May. It's been updated. The regs have changed 2 or 3 times since then, the proposed revised regs. They are constantly being revised. The changes that we made to this letter, does anybody need it read? No, we've all read it? Okay. So the changes are this. There was one typo. We're asking for 45 days notice as opposed to the 30 in general licensing. So we have enough time to see these applicants when they are actually applicants and not licensees. And then in the 3rd paragraph, it actually says 30 days when it should say 45 since that's our first ask. So we're going to fix that. And the recommendation that they create cannabis licensing committees or through existing committees, people are doing different things that work best for their board, but that they place people on those committees that are the same type of people who would qualify under social and economic equity, the provision in the law. And those people are distressed farmers. They are people who lived in over-policed zip codes during the war on drugs. Those are service-disabled veterans. Those are, minority and women-owned business owners. So that is the recommendation. We want the 30 days and we want the proximity to schools, houses of worship, community facilities and harm reduction facilities to be firm and to be without a same blocker road exclusive use provision. Right now, the provision is, so for instance, if there's a school on a block and there's something else in that building, like if there's a deli that has the same address, but it's a different door, they can put a cannabis dispensary right next to that school because it's not an exclusive use building. It's not a building that's exclusively used as a school. Additionally, that same block or road means if you're on a corner and there's a school here, the dispensary can go right here because it's a different block or avenue. So we're asking that that distance of 500 feet for schools is linear and so forth for the other sensitive locations. And that's all. And this is our last chance to comment on these regs. What they are is most likely what they're going to be, but this is our last opportunity to go on record. Questions? Carter?
Yeah, I just wanted to, this letter is exactly the same as what was sent back before.
It's not exactly the same.
Well, there might be a few changes, and it also, you know, it's the same thing I brought up before. I mean, community boards can't make local laws, and that's not clarified anywhere. And there are two definitions of a municipality and what a community board is, and I just feel that this isn't being properly raised, and as a result, in the end, the community boards will not have a voice in this because we're not properly commenting on some of the definitions, and the procedure doesn't quite mirror the liquor licensing process in that it doesn't state where comments from the community board are actually introduced. It simply says that the community board's recommendations are part of the record, and it just seems that we're not arguing enough for our voice in this process, which I think is very important. And so I guess that's the main thing, is just some of the confusions of what exactly the community board's role is in this process. And, you know, and even just looking over the regs that where the comments are made, it actually seems to even limit any agreements quite a bit that an applicant would make with any other party, local community groups in there. But it just feels like we haven't discussed some of these nuances in a way that when we submit this letter, while these issues are absolutely important, our role in our voice being heard, we're not advocating for that. And that's what I think is missing from this. And I have not seen anywhere that it says that a community board can make some rule that an applicant has to adhere to that a state agency would take into account. And everybody may want to believe that, but it's not articulated here in a very clear manner about what that agreement can be. And so that's my issue here. It's not with the overarching themes in the letter, it's that we just don't have a clear understanding of what we can comment on or what actually can be enforced later, all of those aspects. And this is as you said, this is the time, you know, the last chance to sort of get this clarified. But it seems that we all want to think one thing, but it doesn't match what I've seen that's written, or it hasn't been explained in such a manner that any of the work we do would be taken into account, except, you know, the agreement that somebody makes verbally at our meeting with the board, and then they follow what they say they're going to do, you know, which is what we hope everybody does.
Is that all?
Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, the first thing you said about enacting local laws, it's actually in the MRTA. Community board does represent the municipality in the cannabis licensing process. It's written into the law. It is reiterated throughout every version of the proposed regs that have been submitted ever. And local law, it actually doesn't say local law, it says ordinance. And so far, they have been accepting decisions, guidelines, resolutions that have been issued by several boards throughout the city on their preferences around cannabis licensing as such an ordinance. It was a very long speech. I can't remember everything that you said. Is there something else that you
Well,
want
I'll
me to
just, I mean,
address?
the definition, municipality.
So the first thing we do is ask for a definition, which
Right,
I've been
well,
asking
the-
for months, time, place, and manner, which are our powers under the MRTA, under the law, time, place, and manner, but we don't have a definition, which is how the letter actually begins.
Yeah, but
So-
the municipality, the definition of it means
definition of it-
administrative or governing body with the authority to enact any local regulations.
And the
town,
MRTA
city,
says
Or village.
in the 5 boroughs, the community board represents the municipality. It says it like several times.
Community board's only mentioned 3 times. And it
You're
says-
right.
And it says.
Which
that
is
the
several
community board
times.
is the receiving body for notices. It doesn't say it has the powers. And then it defines community boards as meaning an advisory body operating under the jurisdiction of the New York City government, comprised of members appointed by the respective borough presidents, having the primary functions of assessing the needs of and advising elected officials.
Okay, should we
and local
table,
government.
Carter? Because we have to get out of here at 9 o'clock. This is our last chance to
That's
comment.
the provision of the board chair, but I actually spent a lot of time in
Okay.
the last time when this was sent back to do work on
Carter,
it,
do
and
you
I had
ha- Carter,
sent
do you
in-
have something that you want to replace that language with?
I don't, because we just.
I'm not
got this
taking any
2
amendments.
hours. We just got this 2 hours ago, so.
Okay, well, then your comments are so noted and we will move on. Are there any other questions or comments or discussion? I know, I'm sorry, Chenault had. his
Oh,
hand-
sorry. Yes, just one thing. I'm puzzled about the difference in a church and a school. If it's for the protection of children, churches have children in them in an organized way, and indeed, those churches have a school one day a week. Some of them have schools throughout the week. Just to remark that should be changed, however, I would recommend it's being changed so that it's any forbidden place is the equal distance longer. Thank you.
I think though, Chenault, it really has to do with the function of the building that's designated. Is it a building that is designated as a school? Is it a building designated as a house of worship? It's not about the people who occupy it.
Right.
Am I correct? Okay, that's the distinction that's being made. Okay, anything else? Yes, oh. Is your hand up or you just you're gonna think about that? Yeah, we do need a microphone.
Thanks. I think this might be related to what Carter was asking, but I'm a little unclear on the difference between the regulations that they are accepting comment on and the text of the law itself. My understanding is that it's in the text of the law that, you know, we have 30 days to weigh in and we can recommend approval or we can weigh in. But is it in the scope of what we can weigh in on vis-a-vis these regulations, something like the timeline? Because that seems like it's part of the text of the law, not whatever kind of advisory regulations might be going along with the implementation. I don't know if that's clear, but I guess I'm not.
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. So timeline, the 45 days you're talking about?
Yeah.
So every board has commented on the timeline. Presumably these recommendations, these comments from the public, which they consider us the public, you know, are going to be considered and possibly incorporated into the regs, which then become part of the law. We asked for 45 days. CB3 asked for 60. All the CBs have asked for different tips. So we're going to ask because we need more time. Is it in our purview? We're a community board. We're an autonomous body. We can ask whatever we want.
Got it.
So why not?
Okay, any more questions? Oh, Katie, go ahead. Thank you.
Who posed that question? Who posed the question that Mar just asked?
It was Ryder. Ryder had
I
asked.
thought so. Yes, thank you.
Okay, I see no more hands up on the screen and I see no more hands up here. So, thank you, Mark. Okay, we will now that every resolution and item is in the omnibus, we will take a final roll call.
Can you hear me? Is it working? It's working? Okay, great. So we're voting on landmarks, number 1 to 4, landmarks 2, number 1 to 3, quality of life, 1 to 8, land use and housing. There wasn't a resolution, but it was update on 388 Hudson.
No, it was a resolution. It's a
Is
resolution.
there a resolution?
There is
Okay,
one resolution.
number 1. Traffic and transportation, 1 to 3, SLA 1, resolutions 1 to 8, and laid over withdrawn was 9 to 16. SLA 2, resolutions 1 to 8, 9 to 12, laid over. Human services report number 1, and cannabis comments on proposed regulations, number 1. Okay, sorry. Okay. Sorry. Okay, go ahead, Suzanne Aaron. Natasha Avanasians.
Hi, aye on all, with the exception of I'll be recusing on landmarks 1, item 1, and traffic and transportation committee item 1. And I'll be abstaining from cannabis comments on proposed regulations.
Okay, let me make sure I got that. Recusing from landmarks 1, number 1, traffic and transportation, number 1, and abstaining on the cannabis, correct?
Correct, thank you.
William Benesh? Okay. Keen Berger? Carter Booth? Abstain, okay.
Can you please repeat these abstentions, or we can't hear them if
Okay.
the audience.
He said yes to all, abstaining on cannabis. That was Carter, sorry. Katie Bordenaro?
Yes to all.
I'm yes to all. Ricky Cacapolo? Okay. Valerie De La Rosa? Okay, Chris Dignas? Sorry, I couldn't hear a door was closing. 2, 3, 4, and what? Oh, numbers, the actual number 7. Okay, got it. 7, 7. Okay. It's the first number 7, or it's, so it's 6. It's actually, there's no 6, so. Okay, hold on. Okay, Mark Fitzgerald? Stella Fitzgerald? Okay, Susan Gamey? David's not here. Julian Harkey? Wayne Kawadler? Susan Kent?
Yes to all.
Ryder Kessler?
Okay. Yeah, that was really fast. So 234, SLA 234. Yeah. Okay. I will, as soon as I write it down. And then after Carmine's, were you abstaining on the cannabis too? Okay. Okay. Ryder Kessler abstaining on SLA 2, 2, 3, 4, and Carmine's and the cannabis. Thank you. Okay. And Green Kylie? Patricia Laria? Michael Levine? Ed Ma?
Yeah, here.
How are you voting, Ed?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Matt Metzger?
Yes, to all except SLA 2.
I am going to say it aloud, but I'm writing it down first, okay? Matt Metzger, yes, except recusing on cannabis and abstaining from SLA 2, 2, 3, 4, and 6.
Right. And please state your reason for the recusal.
And recusing on cannabis because I'm an advisor to the debt fund, cannabis equity debt fund.
Just writing this. Daniel Miller?
Yes to all.
Okay, Erica Olson? Erica?
We're going.
Yes, to all. Okay. Juan Osorio? He never made it, okay. Brian Pep, sorry. Pep. Donna Raftery?
Abstaining from cannabis, yes to the rest. And just while I have the microphone, I think Natasha also needs to say why she recused.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Thank you.
Can I come back to that at the end? Just finish this and then I'll ask Natasha. But thank you, Donna. Zach Roberts?
Yes to all except no on Carmine's.
No on cannabis?
On Carmine's.
Carmine, sorry.
SLA 2, sorry. Carmine's the fake 7 or whatever.
Okay. All right. And Rosia Sands? Okay. Shirley Secunda? Yes. Okay. Frederica Siegel? Yes to all. Emma Smith? Abstaining on, so Emma said yes to all, but abstaining on cannabis. Okay, Dr. Shirley Smith? Okay, Shanat Spence?
Yes to all.
Susan Wittenberg?
Yes to all.
And Anthony Wong?
Yes to all.
Phew. That was-
Can we have some repeats that we could not hear? There's things in the chat. I know that Natasha has to do her recusal.
Yes, I'm going to ask Natasha right now. Could you explain your recusal?
Yes, on landmarks, 1, item 1, and then I believe it was transportation,
Yes.
traffic and transportation, item 1 as well. I work for the Deputy Mayor of Operations, and in my role, I oversee the New York City Department of Transportation.
Okay, so Natasha said she's abstaining from landmarks 1, number 1, and traffic and transportation number 1 because she works for the deputy mayor of, I'm sorry, recusal. Sorry, thank you. She works for the deputy mayor of operations, which oversees the Department of Transportation. Okay. So it passes. I have to add it all up, but it passes.
Katie, you have your hand up.
I put in the chat that I didn't hear the Dignas vote, Kessler vote, or the Sands vote. Can we hear,
Okay, I'll
hear
say
what
them
those-
again. And Chris and Marcia, correct me if I'm wrong. Chris voted yes, except he's abstaining on SLA number 2, 2, 3, 4, and Carmine, whichever number that is. And Marcia Sands said that she was yes, but abstaining on cannabis. Anything else?
What about Ryder Kessler? What about Ryder Kessler's vote?
Okay, Ryder is, hold on, let me get to him. He's abstaining on SLA 2, numbers 2, 3, and Carmine, and he's abstaining on cannabis.
I have them as 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4, Ryder? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Carmine's.
That's very helpful.
Okay, so everything passes. And if there is nothing else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
To everyone.
Any paper that anybody wants to bring back to the office, just bring it my way.
Donna? Can I ask you a question?
We did, but I got a meeting.